Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And today is episode 20 of Corporate Cardboard. Dan, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm very good, Mackenzie. Yeah, been a little gap again between the last episode, but yeah, we always get to it, and we made it to 20 episodes. That's got to be something, hasn't it?
It's amazing. We've been doing this for more than a year now, and I think we've really gotten into the swing of things, and I'm excited to talk some games.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Should we get straight into it then?
Let's get right into it. So we're going to start off with our first section, the games we've been playing. Dan, what is the first game that you've been playing that you want to talk about today?
Okay, so I'm going to go a bit old school for my first game, and I've been playing St. Petersburg. This is the second edition of St. Petersburg, I should clarify. I've never played the first one, so I can't testify the differences between the two. But this is it's a very simple tableau building game, as you are just collecting cards from this, communal pool in the center of the table. And all these cards have mainly two different types of currency on them, one of which is going to be money, and one of which is going to be points. And it's all about trying to balance the two, because you need the income to get more income, increase your engine or getting more money. But you also, of course, need to buy the points, which is going to be, the goal of the game, of course. But the way this game flows is pretty interesting, because you have, I think it's 5 distinct rounds, all associated to a different deck of cards. And then each of these phases, a bunch of cards come out and fill up this display. And then in turn, you're either buying cards or you're reserving cards or you're passing, essentially. But after every one of those phases, once everyone's passed in a row, then only those cards will cash out. And then it will go into the next phase. And it kind of sounds like a bit of a, I don't know, like a housekeeping nightmare to start with, but actually it's a huge part of the game, where it's all about the kind of cash flow in this one. Because if you have like a bunch of cards that give out cash in the first phase of the game, you might not get cash again until it gets all the way back around to that phase again. So you have to really pace yourself on how you're going to spend your money, and again, be as efficient as you can. And basically, you're just trying to, again, collect these cards, get points. All the blue cards associate to points. I think all the green cards associate to money. The yellow cards let you climb this little market up here, which is a voluntary module you can add into the game, but it adds very little overhead. And I'd always suggest playing with it. And that's just a simple, track climbing exercise. The higher up the track, the more points you get. But it's a really cool thing where some of these cards will let you climb the tracks, but later in the game, you can replace existing cards, which might knock you back down them. So there's a lot of different kind of plates you have to spin here. And, considering how simple it is mechanically, it actually flows so smoothly. And again, just striking that perfect balance between the two, the income and the points you're going to get, is just a really cool thing to try and manage. And I've enjoyed this one a lot. I know a lot of people think or tout this one as one of the classic Euros, and I think it holds up remarkably well. Very little rules overhead, but a lot of crunchy decisions, and it's just fun. It's fast, it flows well, and it's just pretty fast and extremely enjoyable. Just a shame it's quite hard to get hold of nowadays.
Gotcha. I have one question for you in regards to games with lots of cards like this. I'm always wondering, are there any specific or unique cards that you've encountered that whenever you see it, you're like, oh, I really need this card? Or are they all pretty similar in their functionality?
There are a lot of them that are similar, like as a kind of base level, but there are very minor modules you can add into the game, which add a bit more, more unique cards into the fold. And some of these cards are fantastic. Like some of them might let you like jump the queue when you're not the first player and reserve a card before anybody else. Or there are ones which you can kind of climb up 4 tracks or 4 spots on the on that market track to kind of guarantee yourself first spot. But however, every single round it comes to it, you have to pay this kind of tax. So to keep hold of that card, it keeps on costing you. And if as soon as you can't afford it anymore, you're gonna have to get rid of it and fall back down the track. And there's a whole bunch of them that are all different. Some might say just get a coin for every blue card you have, or some of them even you overlap existing cards, but they will be a lot more efficient at doing that, where you buy them cheap, but you can replace them at a higher value. It's a very interesting game.
Cool. This sounds like one I want to check out. I love card-driven games like this, and it seems like even as you describe, it could seem or appear to be fiddly. It looks like it's streamlined in the way the game actually flows.
Oh, absolutely. You could explain this game in 5-10 minutes, and there's no issue with that. And it's actually fun, when you get to the end of each phase, you're like, oh yes, now it's time for all this income. Then there's the next one. Oh, it's now time for all this income. So it's like always feels like you're getting a big kind of influx of either points or money. But the problem is sometimes you get all the points, which is great, and then you got no more money to buy the for the existing rounds that have yet to come. So again, it's a very clever game. I can certainly see why people rate it highly.
Awesome. I love that sensation of just getting showered in income's variety of
Yeah,
types. Great. All
definitely.
right. The game that I want to talk about first today is a new 10 out of 10 game for me. And
Oh,
I think that you need to check this one out. I've introduced it to my brother, I've introduced it to a couple of friends, and we've sort of fell in love with this game. We now have all of the content for it in the library. This is Unmatched Battle of Legends. So I was very apprehensive on trying this game because basically it is a commitment. When you buy this, you are probably going to be getting all the expansion content that comes out. And it's a two-player only game, so the demographic that you can play with is pretty small. You have to have one other person, and you have to be ready for this style of beat 'em up. This is exactly what it sets out to be. It is a duel. You have one character, your opponent has a character, and you're trying to reduce the opponent's health to 0. That's it. That's the setting. However, this game does it in the best possible way. The rule set is dead simple. Just like your other game that you just described, I already forgot, St. Petersburg. The rule teach is so fast. We can teach the game in less than a minute. The board state is scalable based on the experience of the players. You can play with a basic map that has no additional rules or add small little rules that also have very low overhead for major implications. And then you have the characters themselves, where each character has one special ability, and then the rest of the complexity comes from the cards for that character. For example, you may have Sun Wukong, and Sun Wukong's whole shtick is, well, he's the Monkey King. He is from Journey to the West. He has all of the associated powers. So the basic character himself has 17 health, and his special ability is he can pop out clones, these little discs, and they become new characters that can be used with his other cards. So the characters facilitate the different abilities, and the cards and the complexity from them work in tandem to give you unique experiences and challenges throughout the course of gameplay. And this is compounded by the fact there are so many different characters, but because the unmatched system is so simple, you're able to add a lot of complexity with these cards because it's so malleable. You have very little rules, so the complexity can really shine through the cards. Whew, talking a lot about this, but the characters in the Volume 2 box in particular are extremely awesome. So every one of these has a different way that they interact with the board. You have one character that can jump around, is trying to accumulate extra actions. That's Bloody Mary. Every time you take 3 actions at a turn, you get to do some bonus effect. Or it's every time you have 3 cards in your hand at the start of your turn, and every time you take 3 actions, generally you get some bonus effect. You have Sun Wukong, who is using all of these different clone abilities. You have Yanenga, and she has these archers that she can summon around, and these surprise attacks that can happen. And you also have, what is his name? Achilles. Achilles and his homie that are going to go around and tag team destroy everyone. And the Battle of Legends Volume 2 also comes with a new map that has advantage spots. So if you're on certain positions of the board, you get extra attack bonuses if you're attacking somebody at a lower elevation. These are all very minor things to add, but they do make the decisions and the tactical choices that much more intense. It matters where you move, it matters where you're putting those movement points, and it matters where your different characters are positioning. And the one last thing that I want to mention about this set in particular is it introduces a specific type of cards with follow-up attacks. One of my favorite mechanisms in this game is the way that combat is resolved. It keeps the players involved and engaged on both players' turns. And the way it works is whoever is attacking will declare their target, and then they'll play one of their attack cards from their hand. And the attack cards have values here. The red ones are only attack, the purples are for both. But you'll put the card face down, and then the opponent will have a chance to react. They can just let the attack go through and take the damage, or they can play defense cards from their hand, either blue or purple. And then you'll flip the cards and resolve what happened. And a lot of guesswork and interplay between the cards occurs here, because you may be baiting a specific defense card out with your first attack and really be saving your second one for something else. And with the new type of cards, follow-up attacks, there are some cards with really weak initial attacks, but then a secondary attack that's actually printed on the card. That is where the main power is coming from. So it makes that guesswork and prediction aspect that much more intense. And I really enjoy this for this simultaneous play and guessing. It's very engaging, very easy to play, and the different combinations of characters are so much fun. We recently played, last night actually, we played all of the Cobble and Fog characters. And these are some of the classic characters from literature, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Dracula is who I played. Those are the two characters I played, and we fought against the Invisible Man. But there are so many different ways and combinations to play. And there's some characters that you may be very excited to play with, and some that you may not. And that's the beauty of this game, is you can skip sets. So there's a bunch of Marvel stuff that just came out. If you want to keep your Marvel out of it, you totally can. But even just getting the original core box and this second core box, there are so many characters to love. I'm really enjoying Alice in Wonderland and Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. I really like Bruce Lee. He is so cool. He's so powerful. And then the Dracula, I was surprised at how interesting I thought that character was. But for some really amazing back and forth characters, give Unmatched a try. It's wonderful. I really enjoy this experience.
Yeah, I have actually played the Cobble and Fog version quite some time ago, and generally it's not the type of game I'd play. It's more of a do you always play this at 2-player, or have you played it with more than two?
I have not played it with more than two, so I've only played it the two-player version.
Okay, yeah. So I think we only played it with two as well.
Mhm.
And if I'm going to play a 2-player game, it's normally with my brother, and we don't
Yeah.
normally play games where we just kind of wail on each other and just try
Mhm.
and knock each other out. I don't know why, because I'm not particularly against that style of gameplay. It's just not something I'd choose over other things. But I can certainly see why the system is popular, because as you said, it is so simple, and it's just like infinite possibilities of the people you can inject into this one, because as you say, all the gameplay, all the individuality is in those decks, and kind of that space to the opportunity to be creative and make every character unique is just, it's just there. It's just to write your own blank bit of paper ready and just write what you want, and obviously balance it out. But again, that opportunity to be creative is there. So again, I can certainly see why this was a hit, and I can't really fault the gameplay. It's just not something I personally would choose to play over other things.
I totally understand. This is definitely not going to be for everyone. I know
Yeah.
that it's not going to be a game that I'm going to play with my wife very often, because she's not very into the head-to-head beat 'em up style game.
Yeah.
But I can see myself picking this up and playing it a quick game. These games can last anywhere from maybe 15 to 30 minutes, so they're very short in the way they play, and the setup is less than a minute. You flip out a board, you get your deck, you put your character on the board, you just start playing. Yeah, I'm really enjoying this system, and it's kind of the only two-player game I want to play right now. I actually got this in tandem with Summoner Wars, because I've been playing more two-player experiences, and I have not played Summoner's Wars yet because I'm playing this. But I really want to try that, because I hear it's also in that upper tier of the two-player head-to-head battle games. Have you tried Summoner Wars yet?
No, I haven't. I haven't tried Summon Wars.
Okay, I'll let you know what I think of it during our next corporate cardboard here.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm
Awesome,
glad you're
Dan.
enjoying it, because there's obviously a lot of content and it's going to be supported for a long time. So hopefully, yeah, you're going to be happy for a while to come.
Let's hope so.
Okay, so the second game that I've been playing, and this is kind of an initial thing because I've only played this game once so far. This is a game called The Estates. So this was actually a game that I was somewhat apprehensive to pick up and play, because it is widely regarded as one of the nastiest and most cutthroat games out there. And after playing it, I can certainly see why it is considered that, because this game is as much as about hurting your opponents as it is helping yourself. And but despite that, I think all of the things you do in the game, you are actually helping yourself by hurting other players, if that makes sense. So that's normally my comfort spot when it comes to these more confrontational style games. But the Estate is a very simple auction and bidding style game, as you are building up 3 rows of these kind of high-rise skyscrapers, basically. And all you're going to do on your turn is you're going to pick one of these wooden items, which are either any of these buildings, which are randomized, and putting them up for auction. But the cool thing about this game is that the auction, or the money in the game, is a complete closed economy. No more money comes into the game at all. All it does is change hands, and you even get an opportunity before each of your turns to kind of launder some money and basically take a check out of your hand, save it for the end game scoring. So for everyone you do that to, you're going to score a point. But it means that there's less and less money in the game as the game goes on. But again, all you're going to do is either you're going to name your price when somebody chooses the item out for auction, and then everybody gets a one-off turn to do that. Then either the person who's auctioning the item off can either choose to match that price and pay the person who bid the highest, or pay that price themselves. So very quick, succinct auctions where it's not the back and forth 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not like that at all. You have to be very very carefully consider each of your bids. But basically, when you put one of these blocks down of a color, and you're the first person to do so, you will then control that style of company. So it's not like you have a particular color. You actually invest in the companies, and as soon as you do that, you are then the chairman of that company. And each of these buildings you put down, you are going to get points equal to the numbers on them, and you can keep building them higher and higher as long as the next block is of a lower value than the one below it. And then you can ultimately put these roofs on as well to stop any building any higher than that. The thing about this game that is interesting, though, is that none of these buildings are worth anything until a complete row is complete, or a row is completely complete up to that river area there. You can see kind of halfway up the board. Until that point, they are all worth negative points. But the problem with this game as well is that if you kind of really maybe monopolize one of the rows and you are completely running away as the leader, the other players can actually choose to pay to extend that barrier, so that even if you get to the end, they can keep extending it and ensure that you're scoring negative points. So it is, you've got to be very cutthroat in this game. You need to make sure that I'm buying this just to stop you from having it, or I'm buying this purely to make you score a bunch of negative points. And that is pretty much all there is to the game. There's another piece you can get as well, which will double the points, and that could even double the negative points
Oh my gosh.
if that row is complete. It's so simple. It's very elegant, but it is as mean as it gets, and I adored it. I thought it was fantastic. Again, I've only played it once, so I'm going to want to try another few player accounts or with some different players to see what they think. But at the moment, it's 2 massive thumbs up from me. Can't get enough of it, really. That is the Estates.
This looks awesome, and it looks so innocuous in the way it is so cutthroat, but I can see this playing out, how the players are going to be speculating on different areas, moving pieces to force those negative points. It gives me a lot of vibes from games like Food Chain, or even something like Capital Lux, where you're making plays to just completely shut down other people. This is really cool. I enjoy this quite a bit.
Yeah, and that flow of money is great. And if people invest a whole lot of points in something, you can just spend more and just build on top of it and then make it your company. But of course, that might mean that you're going to score the negative points. So it's such a dynamic game. Everything's changing at all times. You might be spending an absolute fortune just to score negative points. So very interesting.
I might have to give this one a try. I saw it on Amazon. I'll take a look at it. Very cool.
I think you'd like it. I mean, if you've got players who are completely, jump in with, both feet and say, we're going to be evil here, just accept it. And it might not go your way, but it's even quick. You even though there's a lot of decisions here, the game only takes about half an hour, 45 minutes, which fantastic. I think I'm very impressed.
I have to give that one a try. Amazing. What's the player count on it?
I think it's 3 to 5.
Okay. Gotcha. That makes sense for something this interactive and aggressive.
Yeah.
All right. So that brings us to my second game here. This is a very, very well-produced filler game. I wouldn't say it's a filler. I'd say this is a family weight game. This is Foundations of Rome. So Foundations of Rome, I've been waiting on this Kickstarter for maybe about 3 years, 4 years, something absurd, but it has finally arrived and I'm pretty happy with it. So I think this game is exactly what it bills out to be. It is a family weight game that is about city building, where your choices and your actions are very simple, but they have big implications. And that has to do with you're building up and buying up these areas on this grid board. And the more you have, the more that you can put out. And your board itself in front of you with all of your pieces has these 1 by 1, these 2 by 2s, and they get all the way up to having up to 4 area of pieces that they're going to be able to actually cover on the board. So when you buy spaces on the board, you may buy a card that says H8 or H1, and that's where you can place something that belongs to you. Now, having a space just for you is awesome because you can put stuff on it, but buying spaces on the board is equally as powerful when you notice your opponent is near there, and you can purposely buy something just so that they can't put something there, even if you have no intention of actually taking it yourself. I love the simple choices here with buy a deed to a spot on the board, put something on the board, or collect some cash. And that's it. Those are the 3 choices. And you do that for 3 rounds. At the end of each round, you'll score points based on the things that you have on the board. And I love that tension and choice between, am I going to take this time to buy more land or to actually put stuff out so I can actually score points? There's a constant tug of, how am I going to manage my time, my resources, my money, and what am I going to do with these different cards that are available? And one thing that I want to talk about in particular, though, in addition to the simplified gameplay, is the addition of all of the modules. So you can see on the back here, the Kickstarter version came with lots of different modules. And there's one module in particular that I think that you should be playing with, and that is I don't know what it's called. It's basically an event module. So the event module adds these new cards that go into the deed deck. Normally in that deed deck, you're going to have just the lands that are on the board. There's one card for each of the spaces. So there'd be an H4, an H5, and H6. Based on the player count, that's going to get bigger and bigger. And it's going to be up on this board up here. And those are going to be the things that are for sale. The longer that they've been out, the less that they're going to be worth. And so if you wait and more people buy stuff, you'll be spending less money to actually pick up these deeds, but you may not get what you want, which is why taking money is a pretty strong move. Now, the module with the events I think is amazing is because they actually get shuffled into the deed deck, and they're going to interrupt that flow of different potential areas coming out. But in order to claim them, they're more so in the vein of Pax Pamir events where you have to purchase them to actually trigger them, as opposed to a random event where you just do it when it's played. So it's up to the players to decide when these events happen. And the coolest thing about them is if you purchase an event, it's worth some amount of victory points as well, since you're giving up your other actions, but you can also trigger it at any time in the future. So you can save one of those events for a crazy play down the line. One event in particular allowed you to swap two adjacent deed areas. And this was crazy because you were able to set up a ridiculous combo in the late game and place one of your huge buildings that you normally wouldn't have been able to. And they mitigate this by you're giving up that action. Your actions are so important in this game because they are limited. I really enjoy the process of the event cards. And I think that if you're playing with it after you've played that first time, I don't think you should go back to playing without them. I think they are that much fun. And I love that it's all player driven events. So that's my recommendation for Foundations of Rome. Play with that module. I have not tried the Monuments module yet. These are communal buildings that all the players can play. They have different effects, and they also have different shapes that don't match the other players on the board. But I really enjoy the events, and I just want to play more of this. I think it's very good, and I'm trying to play it with a high player count next time. I want to try to get into that 5-player category and see how the dynamics change with so many turns in between your own, to see if that affects the deck of cards and the consistency of it, or if it becomes something I don't really like as much because that market may change a little bit too much. But that might just mean that money is a bit stronger because you have more access to the cards that come out right away. So who knows? Who knows what the relationships here will be, but I'm pretty impressed with this and I'm enjoying it quite a bit. So that's Foundations of Rome. Have you gotten a chance to play this one, Dan? Have you heard of it?
No,
Seen it?
no, I don't know. I don't know anyone who's got this one. But I mean, obviously, it looks incredible. The table presence is great. I love Rome. It's probably my favorite place in the world. But the kind of grid reference thing reminds me of a game like Chinatown, where you actually like reserving your spot on the board.
Yep.
I quite like that. But do you think the gameplay matches up to the, obviously, I imagine it's quite an expensive game it's quite a big game. I imagine it comes in a big box. Does the gameplay live up to that, or how much of it is just the spectacle? Or
I think that the spectacle facilitates the gameplay because you are taking these pieces, slapping them on the board, and it's creating a city. It's a very visually appealing, and the gameplay choices are simple, quick, and impactful that I think it's actually a wonderful experience altogether. I do think that the price tag is huge. I think that if they had a version that was available that you could play with just tiles, I think that would work just fine. But I do think those miniatures do add to the tactile presence, and that's a big reason that we play board games in the first place. And I enjoy that. I enjoy this quite a bit. I think that it reminds me a lot of Acquire out of all things, but everything is player driven as opposed to taking random things out of a bag. It's coming off the top of the deck randomly so that you have more time to actually play with the information that you have. So that would be my biggest comparison of this game is to something like Acquire.
Okay. And do you know if they are going to be releasing a, cardboard version, or is this the only thing they're doing?
I think this is the only thing they're doing. They had a news debrief where I believe they were going to run another Kickstarter for this specific version. The price tag of it, if you get the wash, is significantly more than if you don't get the wash. But I do recommend that you get the modules because I do think the modules are that interesting.
Okay. And so do you think this one's going to be still talked about in, say, a year's time or so? Or is it?
That's a good question because I think that it's not easy to get. So I think that's going to prevent it from being talked about just because it's not available. I think that's going to be the hardest thing. And maybe because of that, they might push it to a retail version, an easier easier to buy version. I think that is going to be what needs to happen to get it to be talked about more.
Yeah, I
I think
agree.
it's I think it's a perfect spot in our library because this is one that we can bring out. It's a big showstopper. This is a great side game. You put it on the side, people blow up it and like, oh my gosh, I got to get this. But
Oh, yeah.
I do think it's going to prevent people from actually playing it, and
Yeah.
I don't see it getting to the top 100 just because of how inaccessible it is.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'd love to try it. It looks fantastic. Yeah.
Oh
It's
yeah,
very tactile and visually amazing.
quite fun. I do enjoy it, and it's one that I do ask to play.
Brilliant.
Foundations of
Okay.
Rome. Dan, your last game. What are we talking about?
Yeah, so my last game is quite a bit different than the other two I've mentioned. This is a game that came out a couple of years ago, actually, called Switch and Signal. So this is actually a cooperative train game, and it's all about the logistics of trains, picking up and delivering things to different cities. But as I said, it is completely cooperative and it is card driven. So every round, I think you're drawing 5 cards. You've got a maximum potential of 10 cards, I think, in your hand. And there's only 3 different types of cards. One is to move these switches, one is to turn on these signals, and the other one is to actually move the trains. So you basically got this big map, and on this map of like Europe, or I think there's an American version as well, you have a bunch of different train tracks and junctions. But every round there's going to be new trains spawning on these spawning spots, and they're going to automatically move a number of trains. So you've got some control over what you move, but also every round is automated movement. So you need to make sure that you're kind of creating pathways to create for these trains to travel down, and create switch the junctions so it suits your needs to go to the certain cities to pick up certain cubes, then drop them off at the port cities. But all this time, obviously, all the trains are moving. You're trying to be as efficient as you can by stopping them or preventing them from stopping at red lights, or from stopping them from colliding into each other, or even like backing up on one another, because every time you do that, you're going to start bleeding these time tokens. Think of something like the fear tokens from Spirit Island. When you build up stuff, you're kind of shedding these tokens, and then if you bleed too many of them, then you're going to lose the next kind of event that comes out each round, and that event deck is going to be your timer for the game. So you need to get all the cubes deposited by the time that deck runs out. So you've got to be very careful about not wasting any movement at all, because it's going to bring the game to a halt. That's pretty much the extent of the game. So it's completely transparent. Everybody can see each other's hands if you want to play that way. Completely open discussion and purely cooperative. But I tend to really like the style of pure logistics. Where have I got to move this to here? What train am I going to move first? Because some trains move faster than others. What should I move the junctions to? Should I move this train first and then switch the junction so the other slower train can get through after? It's just a really cool little puzzle that only takes about 30 minutes to play. A really good solo experience as well, and it's a very pleasant game. I said the only bit of skepticism I had with this one was the kind of replayability factor, because there's only 2 maps that come with the game, one of which feels like a bit more of an intro version, because there's only one port city. So all the trains, no matter where you're picking stuff up from, are going to that city, which means you can kind of lay a bit of a more of a solid structure on the board, where you can kind of divert trains down a certain route and it will be rinse and repeat. Whereas the other board is certainly a lot trickier, because there are 2 port cities and there's no way of getting around having to keep on switching and changing signals. So I would have liked to see more content come out for this one, maybe more map packs with different features on them. But the actual core system itself is rock solid. Anybody can understand this one, and it's just a kind of a puzzle that anybody's going to get. So I think it's really good. I just wish it was supported a bit further, and I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I'm skeptical about it, because I think it's been 2 years now and there's not been an expansion, but I think it should, because it's a very good game.
I have a question on the quarterbacking in this game. Is it present in this experience? Is it pretty heavy?
It absolutely could be. Yeah, there's no stopping quarterbacking at all.
Gotcha.
It's a free for all. If you've got somebody who's like that and they're gonna impose their will, then yeah, it's gonna be free reign for them to do so. There's nothing stopping that.
I love the little trains in here and how they actually hold the components in them. That's adorable. I think that one's created by somebody, but the actual trains themselves holding the cubes inside. This is so cute.
Yeah.
I'm surprised
Yeah,
this didn't make it onto a component appreciation.
Yeah, it could do in the future, because it actually works. It's not too fiddly. It's a solid game. If you like pick up and deliver and you like logistics, then this is going to be everything you want, really.
And I haven't really seen any cooperative train games before. Have you seen this? Is this something that you've been looking for?
Well, to be honest, cooperative games are a bit of a strange thing for me because I don't
Hmm.
have many at all in my collection, and if I do, I think they're all party games. So this one is something completely different, and again, made me want to try it because it was so unique and different. You know, a train game you have to work together. Um, yeah, it's a different take on it. I mean, I'm kind of out of touch with co-op games. I think most of the co-op games I played have been the old kind of pandemic formula, you know, the whole four actions thing and the game working against you. Whereas this one is completely left field off that. So that's something. And it works. I can't criticize the gameplay at all. It's as smooth as it gets and really low rules overhead, but still the gameplay is there because you've got to map things out carefully, and it's tricky, it's tough, and sometimes you get very congested parts of the board, and kind of doing things just right to stop any collisions or wasting time is quite brain racking.
That's awesome. This sounds really good. I think I have a set of friends that I think would really enjoy this. This might be one that I have to try out with them. Good
Yeah,
recommendation. So 2020 game, how pricey is it? You know?
I it's cheap here in the UK. I think I played less than I think it's about £25, so that's not expensive at all.
And what player
Um,
count do you recommend?
I I would recommend one or two. I think that's the best. I mean, I would play it
Gotcha.
with three if you've got people who are just going to chill and play it. But I've happily played with three and had no issues. But as a solo game, it works pretty well. And you know, two players is not going to be that. You know, I think it's going to be less potential for someone to get shut out of the game. You know, if there's more experienced or more dominating players. But there we go. I think it scales pretty well.
Awesome. Good to hear. All right, so that is Switch and Signal. Now, the last game that I want to talk about here is one that I just played yesterday. I played 2 games of it in a row, and it's one of the most arduous teaches I've had to go through. And it's just me setting up the game, teaching it to myself so that I can teach it to others. And it took me about I don't even want to say. I don't know how long it took. I started at like 7 o'clock in the morning yesterday and I finished around 3 or 4 and it was ridiculous. This is Burncycle. So this is a Chip Theory Games production where you are playing as a set of robots who are breaking into corporations, and these corporations all have something you're trying to maybe expose or destroy, anything like this. And it's all based on this mission card that you pick. The mission card is going to dictate the different corporations' floors and strengths and things that you have to do as bots. And then each corporation itself has a specific building, and that building is going to have the layout of the rooms. At the start of this, you'll pick your corporation, a captain that leads or is trying to find you, and then you'll choose your own individual bots that are your characters for the game. In addition to these bots, you'll choose one command module bot. And this is essentially a group controlled miniature that is going to be a chip that you need to push around collectively. And it's such a weird concept because a lot of the times when playing cooperative games, I'm not a big fan of games where I have to control lots of different characters at the same time. And this one has it baked into the core system where every player is communally controlling this individual character in addition to their own. But I think it works really well here because in addition to the abilities on your player agents, you also have the ability of that extra command module, and he's more of a blanket ability for all the players to use in other facets of the game. For example, in the last game that I played, my command module bot, he had no abilities on the board, but his effect made it so that when you're networking, that's another portion of the game, we were trying to get some additional upgrades and stop the enemy CEO from trying to find where you are. You can go clockwise or counterclockwise on these rings. Probably means nothing right now, but it's really cool because not you're customizing your experience to the T. You're picking a scenario, you're picking a corporation that the scenario fits to, and then you're setting up with the captain, the characters that you're using, the command module, and then you set up the map, and then you go. This has a lot of similarities to Too Many Bones, where you can choose the length of the mission that you play. Normally, you'll play on floors, and each floor is essentially a new setup. If you're playing a really long game, you can play on 3 floors. If you want to play just a short game in and out, you just play on 1 floor. And it's up to you to manage your resources to make it through all of those floors. And the game has objectives that pair well with that. So you can choose the complexity, the length, as well as the challenge based on the captain that you're going against. So lots of choice from the get go, but was the game worth it? This game's rulebook is One of the things that chip theory games is pretty notorious of is it's hard to learn their games. So Cloudspire was a beast, but I thought that one was really well laid out. It was easy to start playing, and the complexity came from the upgrades. Too Many Bones was pretty rough, but they had some good tutorials in the back of their rule books. This one has a combination of both of these things. This is a game that includes 3 separate rule books where you have a learn to play guide, a rules reference, as well as the floor plan. The floor plan lets you set up the missions, and then the learn to play has generally most of the rules, where the rules reference is very Fantasy Flight Games. It's got a glossary where you're going to look up specific things if you have questions. Oh my gosh, this was so hard. It's because you are following this tutorial to the T, and it's got these boxes where you're moving around. The game plays itself for the first couple of hours as you're getting comfortable with everything and you're looking up references for rules. And then after 2 floors of the initial mission, it lets you go. And that's where you use the rules reference and you're going back and forth. You also have to look up a secondary PDF online to be able to continue the tutorial because it's not actually printed in the box. So I'm sitting here trying to piece this together, and I'm feeling Burncycling in my head. I'm feeling the burnout as I am just trying to muscle through this rulebook and try to figure out what's going on. But ultimately, I think that tutorial was perfect. I think that it introduced the game in a way where you were taking every single action. You physically move the pieces. You follow it along with the tutorials. And as long as it may have taken, I think it was worth it. Because now, this game is kind of all I can think about with up there with Unmatched. Unmatched is the one that I'm like, ooh, I just want to get a couple of quick games in this. Burncycle is the game I'm thinking of, like, I can't wait to play this next. Like, I think that I'm going to play it as soon as I finish organizing some stuff over there. But I really enjoy this game. I think it's a lot of fun as all of the customization is immediate. You start off with your mission, and the first action you take in the game is you program your bot with special powers. You get to choose different abilities. You can choose to take more actions in the collective pools, and you can also upgrade action dice and use those during the game. And then you start playing, and the action sequence is fun. It's intuitive. It's really cool, the action sequence itself. But the biggest complexity and the biggest hurdles are the resolution of the actions. And that's the hardest part because everything is very in depth. For example, opening a door is a challenge all in itself. Normally, it might be a simple action. Oh, yeah, you do this thing, you open the door. No, in this game, if you want to open a door, you got to perform the action. You have to be next to the thing. If you've got a chip that's another type, you get an extra bonus. But then you get to reveal a keypad card, and the keypad card has specific things that you have to do to open it. Or if you don't want to do that, you could break the door, and you could break the door by rolling your action dice. But if it's jammed, you can't break the door, so you got to make sure you do the other things. Lots of stuff like that, and it's wild because yes, it is hecka complicated. You're going to have all of these rules that you're going to have to remember, but that tutorial helped so much with providing the framework for the game, presenting the options that are available to you at all times, because there's so much freedom in this game, but giving it to you in I would say it's digestible, but in the way that like a 5-foot long sub is digestible over like 3 days. It was insane. But it's a great game. Like, I can see this becoming a game that I play all the time because now I know how to play it and it's fun. It is very fun because the game is actually challenging and it's so different from every other chip theory games. There's no health chips in this game. That's one of the things that they're pretty big for is you put the chips underneath your characters and they move around. No, in this game, your chips are being used to program things. There actually aren't very many chips in this game. A lot of it is based on action dice and the characters you're moving around. The production is wonderful. I think they did a great job with this game, and you have lots of little mini games that are consistently happening. So every little action you take has so many different things that go on, but each of those is fun, thematic, and interesting, and has a lot of player choice. So that's my spiel on Burncycle. That's from 2 plays. I played through the tutorial, and then I set up a corporation challenge myself, and so that's all happened in the last 18 hours, is all these experiences. So that's where I'm at right now with Burncycle. I can't wait to play more. I really want to. I'm about to go on vacation tomorrow, and I'm really sad because I'm not bringing this with me, but I'll be thinking about it the whole time. So I'm going to try to sneak in a game before I leave.
Okay.
Any questions on this, or like, oh my
I'm glad
gosh.
it finally paid. Yeah, I'm glad it paid off in terms of the effort you put into
Yeah.
it. Are we talking this is like right up there with the heavy of the heavy?
I would say yes. I would put
Yeah.
this learning experience up there with something like a Mage Knight or
Okay.
Lisboa. The amount of things you have to think about and how you'll read the explanation of an action and be like, I have no idea what any of this means. And it is not intuitive. But once you start
Right.
playing it, you're like, got it. Okay, this is why this happens. This is connected to this. This is where the programming comes into play. Whew.
Okay. And
Oh my
you did say
goodness.
this was cooperative, didn't you?
It is cooperative. So I played a two-player game of this, and then I played a solo game of it, and it does a great job doing both. The coolest thing about it is the amount of upgrades you get are different based on the player count you play, because the game is a bit easier, I think, the more people that you have. But it's also a bit harder because you have to. There's more people for the enemy to bump into, if that makes sense. More people because it's an infiltration game. This is a stealth game where you're trying to sneak in and try to not be detected. Not a lot of combat happens in this game. You are very much trying to do things as covertly as possible.
Right. Okay. And obviously, with it being co-op, does it mean that you can kind of take a lot of the weights of the front loading the rules off because you can hold people's hands through it if
I
they've not
think
played it
that
before?
because I know how to play this game, it is going to make teaching it a breeze for every single other
Yeah.
player. This reminds me a lot of Nemesis, or reminds me a lot of Too Many Bones and Cloudspire, actually, where this is going to be a game that I teach people, and they're going to come away with a great experience because they
Brilliant.
don't have to know the nitty gritty stuff. I could just say, open the door if you want. And then when they decide to do that, that's when I'll rattle off the different sequences in that. Very similar to like Perseverance. Like I'm not going to front load all this on you. It's going to make the game itself miserable and take way too
Yeah.
long. So I'm actually very excited to teach this, and I'm glad I pushed through and figured it out. It works. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, it's good that it's good that you can now just facilitate a smooth game, and again, you've taken on the burden, and now you can all enjoy it. Hopefully, for the rest of your time with the game. So yeah, good.
I hope so. I hope this is one that Ariana enjoys, because I can see this being a cooperative game very similar to Too Many Bones, where we can pick it out, customize it to whatever we want to play at that moment, and then start playing.
Okay. Brilliant. Well,
But
I'm glad it paid off.
very happy with Burncycle so far, and I'm glad it's summertime because I'll have a lot of time to play more of it. Awesome.
Brilliant. I'm just going to quickly turn my light up a second. It's getting a bit dark in here.
Sure, no worries. All right, so while Dan is going to go do that, we are going to move on to our next section here. We're going to be doing our crowdfunding picks. So Dan is going to start us off with his crowdfunding pick. What do you got for me today?
Yeah, so I've actually got something that I backed on Kickstarter and something I'm quite
Amazing.
excited for, actually. I didn't know anything about this game, but I just came across it as browsing, and this is Union Stockyards. So this is, again, I don't know intricate details about this one at all, but I saw it and it caught my attention. And one of the things why it caught my attention was because I think the main feature in the game is a supply and demand market. So that's one of my favorite mechanisms. I love supply and demand in games, buy low, sell high. Brilliant. But normally when you have a market like that, it's kind of a side mechanism or a smaller part of the game. I'm pretty sure this is one of the main features of this game. It's advertised as being very little luck. I think one of the main mechanisms is actual worker placement, but I'm more interested in that whole kind of communally run market. I'm really intrigued by it. It's all about trying to, it's all about processing meat, I think. So it's a strange theme, and probably not for everybody, but it's different. And I like things that are different. I've got quite a lot of faith in this designer, not because he's made other games before, but he seems to really know his stuff. It seems like he's thought about things carefully here. And I don't know, I'm kind of all in, really. And this is a nice, refreshing take on what Kickstarter is supposed to do. This isn't a big, already proven, successful company just using this as a pre-order system. This is a designer who seems to have a really cool idea, and he wants to use Kickstarter to get that game supported. So going back to bare bones here, I'm very kind of happy to support a designer like this to get this project on the go. And I think this one has potential to be kind of a game that flies under the radar, but could be a solid design that's going to hold up well. So I'm all in, really. I'm really excited to see what it has to offer. And it looks mechanically, it's going to be kind of an economic simulation that is up there with a lot of the other kind of classic, very little luck games. So again, that's what I know. But from that, I'm all in.
Wow. I really like this. Are there any plans for this to come to retail?
I don't know. I'm not too sure, to be honest.
Okay. Interesting. So I really like the design of this game. I think you mentioned it already that this is a unique theme in this. It's set in Chicago, Illinois, the meat packing industry. I like the idea of having specialty meats, and it looks like there's some city building as well with putting out different pieces on a board and then adjacency bonuses, which I think is fascinating. And as you mentioned with the market manipulation, I had not heard of this one until you mentioned it, and it just sounds wonderful.
Yeah, like I said, that little spatial puzzle there looks interesting. I think it's some kind of efficiency thing where you've got to try and track buildings of your color through each type, and I don't know. There's a lot going on here, but maybe not too much. But yeah, caught me off guard, just like it obviously has you as well.
Yeah.
But I think, why not? Let's give this one a go.
What did you hear about this one first?
I actually just saw it scrolling through all the Kickstarter projects.
Hmm.
I just saw just saw the advert, clicked on it, and thought this looks right up my alley. So they got my money.
They got you, and I think you
They
said
got
it
me.
well. It looks like a very well thought out project. We got Mom Gamer with us in the stream. Good to see you, Mom Gamer. Nice to have you join us. And once again, if you have any questions or comments about anything we talk about here, please let us know, and we'll make sure to feature them. So thanks for being here, Mom Gamer. All right. Anything else you want to add to Union Stockyards?
That's pretty much the extent of my knowledge on this one, to be honest. So maybe check it out if you didn't know about it.
Oh, I hope that it's good. I hope this becomes one of those games that just really takes off because it looks really well done. I think artwork is spot on.
Yeah, I think it's Andrew Bosley who's done the artwork.
All right. Now, I have a game that is the exact opposite of what you described. It is a game by a company that's using it as a big pre-order system. And it's a project that has a lot of positives and negatives, but this is one that I've been waiting for a very long time. This is Batman Gotham City Chronicles Season 3. Now, I really enjoy the original Batman game. Batman Gotham City Chronicles has a two-player mode, a versus mode that I really enjoy. You have these command modules with these sliding river mechanisms in front of you, and you move them around, and the allocation of your action points, as well as mitigating the different factors of luck to succeed on a mission, is so much fun. It's one I really enjoy. But this Gotham City Chronicles Season 3 brings in not only a role-playing game, but also the biggest reason I'm excited for is a cooperative and a solo version of the game. This is so exciting for me because I can play this game all the time now, and the mitigation of the luck and the luck determining the wins is going to feel a lot less worse when you're actually playing a solo cooperative mode. You're going to be trying to mitigate things as much as possible, but also keep in mind that you're playing with the luck of the players, but also this enemy AI that you're going to be able to figure out and try to curb that luck towards. And it's something that I think should work really well for this game system. So now I'll have more ways to play a game that I really enjoy the core systems of. And in particular, there's also some quality of life improvements for this experience as well. So you can get the original game, but you can also get, here's all the new all-in stuff. You can get the Gotham City in Flames, which is a new campaign expansion. You can also get a new Eden expansion. This is where you can play as the villains and have them have their own character arcs and their own story, which is great. You get to play as the villains, but it also has the Bat Computer files. This expansion is hilarious because what it is it's a reworking of all of the content, all the paper content from the original game. It has a new rulebook, new mission rulebooks, new layouts, new everything to help make this game accessible, because this game is notorious for having one of the worst rulebooks around. So this changes all of that. It also adds player profiles to the game, which essentially are little cards that you're going to be giving to the different players, and these cards will have explanations for what the different iconography and the different symbols are, so that way you don't have to go back and reference anything. This is amazing. This is what the game needed to make it accessible for new players, but also make it so that it's something that's not going to be a chore to play. And I'm so excited. I think this looks great. Paul Grogan did the rule book for this, and you have all of these new heroes. And my favorite things are some of your new goons, which I think are great. You can put them in with a variety of characters. You've got Man-Bat Commandos, ninjas, and of course, Rocket Penguins. This is amazing. So I can't wait to try all this stuff. It looks like amazing quality of life improvements for the games. And I'm so excited that Bat Computer Files is really the tipping point, I think, and it's what's going to get people excited to want to play the game. So that's Batman Gotham City Chronicles Season 2. Have I backed Season 2? Yes, I had already backed Season 2. Had more characters that arrived at the start of quarantine, I believe. So I was able to play a lot of that with Ariana. We did a lot of there's a fan-made cooperative version that we played, and we played a lot of that. And then I also played some of the versus mode with it. And then here's another good question from Mom Gamer. Do you have a shelf of shame? Because it seems like you play all the games as soon as you get them in. Dan, do you have a shelf of shame?
I do have a shelf of shame, yeah. I've probably got about 25 games or so on there.
Okay. Oh my gosh, you serious?
Yeah, I'm serious.
I have my answer to your question, Mom Gamer, is no. I do not have a shelf of shame. I do play my games as soon as they come in. I hate it when a game is just sitting there and not played. What a waste! Like I feel like you bought the game, you better play it. Like if it sucks, you better get rid of it now while it's still got some value. So whenever a game comes in, I make it my mission to open it. If it has a solo mode, learn it immediately, play it so that I can teach it. If it doesn't, that's the only game I bring to game nights. Normally people bring a whole bag of games. If I have a game I really want to play, that's the only game I bring because that now there's no other options. This is all I brought. So I'm being nice. I only have one game and I'm not trying to press on all this stuff, but I really dislike having games unplayed. But right now I have 5 unplayed games because I just got a box in and I'm about to go on vacation, so I'm gonna have a show of shame now. I have 5 games I gotta play. I gotta play the new Steel Slayer. I gotta play Blitzkrieg. I gotta play that one. Summoner Wars. I gotta play I think that's it. Just those 3. Sorry, 3 games. So less than I thought.
But yeah, I definitely want to get to that stage where I get a new game in and play it, keep it or get rid of it. But my shelf of shame normally builds up because I find these games that I'm kind of interested in at a good price, and then it gets pushed to the back of the queue because I find another game and a new one comes out, and it's just like a conveyor belt, really.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Oh, interesting. Yeah. I don't know, man. I can't do it. Now, Mom Gamer, you got to tell us if you have a lot more. I want to know how much is a lot for you, because I've seen people with basements of unplayed games. My friend Mike has ridiculous amounts of unplayed games, and it's really funny because sometimes I'll play a game with him that we have in our library, and then he just won't even open his copy. He'll sell it right off, and he's got everything in like the pristine packaging. Yeah. It's wild. So I'm curious what you think a big number is. What would you ballpark? What do you think is a big number, Dan? Do you think 25 is a big number?
I think it's a pretty fair number, but any more, or when it starts getting above 30 or 40, that's when I'd start getting a bit a bit jittery about it.
There are 25 games.
Yeah.
What's on the top of the like? What happens? Like, I imagine that some games get buried in the pile. You just never play them.
Yeah, they do. So I've had some games on there for a long time that I've had Cooper Island up there for a long time. I just haven't got around to learning it. Or what else have I got? I've got like the original Game of Thrones game there I haven't played. But then recently I've picked up a copy of Messina 1347 and Bear Raid. All these newer games come out and I want them, so I've got to pick them up when I can. But I will get around to playing them. I will get around to it.
Oh my goodness. Do you ever have big pushes where you just play a bunch of your unplayed games?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, generally every month we play about 20 new games. So
that's true.
Yeah. So we will eventually get through them. And I don't buy games for the sake of it. These are all games I genuinely want to play and experience. So it's not like I'm just picking up everything I see. So sooner or later we will get through them.
That's good. I'm glad you actually have the drive to actually play these. That's good. My Gamer says 50 games, around 50, whispering the number because I'm too embarrassed. Oh my goodness, 50 games. I cannot imagine. And I don't think I ever want to get into the position where I have unplayed games, because then I think I'm going to fall behind. There's no way. So I have to be pretty proactive about getting them played. And I think that comes a lot with my selection of games. Most games that I purchase have cooperative or solo modes, and I try to play those before I teach them to other people because I really want to facilitate a good experience. But this stresses me out thinking about unplayed games, and I'm thinking that I'm going to have quite a bit when I come back from vacation that I'll have to learn. So let's see if I can. I'm going to see if I can play all the new Steel Slayer stuff today. And this sucks because I want to play more Burncycle. So it's like, I could have a shelf of shame. It wouldn't be so bad. Everybody has one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Mom Gamer agrees with you. Big pushes, play a bunch all at once. Keeping all those rules fresh, that sounds like a challenge to me. So good on you. All right, this brings us to our next section. This is the news section. And this time we just have one news segment between the two of us. And this is more of a question than it is the news segment. It's a couple of new game releases. But my question here is, Unifix cubes in gaming? What do I mean by this? So there are a lot of games that come out every so often that use unique components. For example, you have, we'll talk about later, and we have Planet Unknown that has some really cool components in it, Planet in general. But this one in particular is a component that's not unique. It's something that we've seen before. That's in elementary school. These are called Unifix cubes. So Tree Blocks is a game where you're creating these different shapes using Unifix cubes. They've got these 5 holes on a cube and then a peg on the other. And you could push them into each other, and they're used a lot for helping count or as just toys that you can manipulate and play with. So Tree Blocks here uses them in an interesting way, but it is an already established piece, a construction. My question to you, Dan, is have you seen any games like this recently that have reused something, an item from another aspect of life, whether it be an educational tool like this, or it be something a little bit more off the, I guess, off the chain, a little bit different? What do you think?
I know what you mean. Oh, good question. The only thing that springs to mind are like some games use like shoelaces and things like to interweave and stuff like that. So they're kind of, as I said, just off the rail, mass-produced things you could probably make for dirt cheap and just make a rulebook with it. But yeah, there's not many I can think of. But yeah, that's it. That's what I can think of really. Just like string or again like shoelaces, magnets.
There's rubber bands, things with rubber bands.
Yeah.
Let's see. Foam? Is there anything with foam? Any games that use foam?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
So this is more of a challenge to everybody watching this video. If you can think of any games that just use things from other aspects of life and do it well, I'd love to know. Because this looks pretty interesting. I like this idea of 3D area control. That seems really fascinating, scoring points based on patterns. It looks a little bit like Ubongo to me with the ways that you're trying to manipulate and match the shapes. So it sounds neat, but I'm curious as to what other games are going to actually have these weird components implemented. And then can you create your own version of the game using those implemented components?
Yeah.
So pretty neat. That is just my quick question to the audience here. This is Unifix cubes in gamings. What other games potentially? Oh, here's a cool one. A game that uses clips for train tracks. Nitwit uses pegs and string. Funny you say that, come dice with me, because I'm actually going to talk about Nitwit later in this video, I think. Oh, no, that's not true. I just talked about it in a video that I recorded this morning. So that is actually on the mind, is Nitwit. That's funny that you mentioned that. All right, so that is the news items. Now we go into card and component appreciation. Dan, start us off. What card or component are you excited to talk about?
Yeah, so the component I'm talking about is from a game called Planet. And this is kind of another kind of just open-minded discussion really about being surprised why this one didn't quite take off the way I thought it would, because it's such a unique concept and something that's quite simple and could be used again and again. So this is like a magnetic, almost like it's like an orb, like literally a 3D, supposed to represent a planet, of course. And you're attaching these tiles, magnetic tiles, to this orb to create a 3D tile placement game. So it actually wraps around to create, again, like a 3D puzzle, basically, where instead of having a flat sheet like in Carcassonne, the edges will wrap around and add bigger terrains together. So I thought this was a really cool idea. And again, I thought this one had its kind of five seconds of fame, really. It seemed to do well for a little time, and then it just faded off into obscurity. Well, I thought this was a gimmick that could have done better and could have been used again, or maybe even in a more complex game. But I kind of, full props and respect for trying this, and I suppose pulling it off. But I thought it was just a cool idea, and again, just wanted to make more people aware of it if they didn't know it was out there.
I really like this, and it brings me to a feature in a lot of games where it feels really nice to hold something that you're working on, whether it be a bag building game where you're consistently putting chips in and you're able to consistently feel those and dig in. That gives me the same vibes with Planet. I really enjoy the fact that I can spin it around, I can look at it, and at the end I have this thing that I've crafted throughout the entire experience. What a great sensation.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, I remember I've only played this one like 1 or 2 times, but that is definitely true. You're always constantly just like puzzling it around, looking what you could do, what the best placement is. And I think that the component itself and the gimmick nature of it is quite strong to make it stand out above
Mhm.
a lot of other games, because there are so many different tile placement games out there. It's not just a gimmick, it's not just a component. It does actually change the gameplay, because you've got to think of a whole new dimension, literally. So yeah, so that was my choice. The magnetic orb, I suppose, from Planet.
Of going to a different planet, I'm here to talk about a component that's from the new planet Unknown. And this in particular is called Susan. So, Susan is, as you can imagine, a lazy Susan. And it's so awesome because not only is it functional, it works, but it also facilitates the gameplay very well and is a key aspect of the action selection system. So, the way it works is on your turn in Planet Unknown, you're going to, as the commander, choose one of the sections of this lazy Susan to rotate in front of you. And then you'll be able to pick one of the tiles that's in that section in front of you. Every other player will then be taking from the two tiles that have been moved in front of them. This is so interesting because you can put yourself into positions where you are being as greedy as possible, or you are purposefully putting poor tiles in front of the other players. This is such a great concept, and the fact that it works and it moves and it functions so smoothly, it's brilliant. I love this system, and I like how they were able to use, and it looks really good too, a lazy Susan in the game. In addition to that, the central area of this actually pops out and you can rotate it so that you're adding more variability to each game by changing the different depots of tiles. What a brilliant system. And the fact that it functions well, wonderful. I strongly recommend you take a look at this, even if you just want to admire it. I think it's really well done.
Yeah, I can definitely see this being recycled in other games.
Mm-hmm.
So much things you could do here creatively to yeah, use a lazy Susan. Pretty cool. I like it.
It's super well done. So well done, Planet Unknown on Adam's Apple Games. Your Susan works. And that brings us to our next section here. This is This or That. Ooh, Mom Gamer says, likes Planet Unknown. I'm glad you like it. I'm playing my first multiplayer game of it today, hopefully. So that is Planet Unknown. Super exciting. So that is Planet Unknown. And now we move on to our next section, This or That. So we're actually going to go back to our previous week's question. And this was This or That, Cascadia or Calico. And this was posted over on Dan's channel. We're going to go take a look at those responses. But a quick reminder, Dan, where do you sit on this one?
So I do prefer Cascadia to Calico. I just think it's a slightly more relaxing experience, but it's still puzzly enough to be engaging. I do like Calico. I think they're both really good games, but I think Cascadia does have the edge. So therefore, I chose it.
Yep, and I think I'm definitely with you there. I think the biggest barrier for me to enjoying to enjoying Calico was the huge importance of your end game storing tiles and how much at the mercy you were of the tile draw to actually completing those. And you saw your chances at completing them dwindling as the game went on. But even if you had those high chances of completing them, a poor tile draw at the very end could cost you so many points. So that was pretty frustrating on my end. Mom Gamer joins us with saying Cascadia, and it looks like it's an overwhelming majority here with the community poll, with Cascadia taking it with 77%. Let's look at some of the comments here. Christopher says, depends on the group. Calico, because it's puzzly, hard board game with just him and his brother-in-law. But then Cascadia is great with the quick family games. Looking forward to playing Cascadia, but imagine Calico would be the one for me. Tight, unforgiving decisions, which makes sense. Lots of unforgiving moments that can happen there. And then liking the theme, better than the generic theme of Cascadia, but Cascadia being a ton of fun and easy to get to the table. And then big crunch that Calico provides over Cascadia, preferring the double thick player boards. I do think the player boards in Calico are pretty amazing. Those are nice. And I love the way that the outside of the boards actually count as tiles for you. That is such a great system. I really appreciate that. And then come dice with me, Cascadia, but really likes Calico too. Awesome. I agree with you there. And then Tim is average. Calico offers a theme and art that's alluring. Gameplay is there, but not perfect. Cascadia is better game in some ways, but the theme is not so good. Interesting. And then we've got Cascadia a couple days ago. Cascadia is too open for me. I like the tension in Calico. Cascadia is more elegant. They'll both stay in the collection. Looking for the neither option for Kyojin here. Oh, man. So it's interesting. A lot of the vocal minority is supporting their Calico claims, but Cascadia seems to be the overall majority winner here. And I think that openness and that understanding of... I want to say that I think that the decisions in Calico are very hard. The decisions in Calicos are hard because you have a lot of things you're juggling, and you have to do those well to win. But I think that the injected randomness from the tiles that are available is a big hamper on my enjoyment of Calico. If there was
I
more
agree.
control in Calico, then that would make it a better game for sure for me. But
Okay, but that being said, although we've paired these off against each other, I do actually feel like there is room for both of these in a collection. I wouldn't object to anybody feeling that way because they are, although there is obviously a lot of shared DNA there are quite distinct, different vibe of the game.
totally, absolutely agree.
Hmm.
All right, and that brings us to our question for this week, and the question will be posted on my channel's community tab, so make sure to cast your vote afterwards. But I'm curious to hear what you think now. Dan, question this week is house rules or no house rules? What do you think?
Uh, I'm certainly not against house rules if I have belief that these house rules aren't going to um, change the balancing of the game at all. I can't think of many games that actually do house rule, but I can think of a few. And I've never had an issue implementing them. So yeah, I'm all for it. What about you?
Gotcha. I try to never use house rules. So I think that if a game is good, it doesn't need them. You shouldn't have to house rule a good game. And a lot of the times the rules are there because the designer intended it for a specific way. Even if you may not think that it makes sense or that it should work this way, those rules are there for a reason. They wouldn't put them there if they're not. And if they're not there for a reason, probably just a bad game. So you probably shouldn't worry about it. I was thinking back as to house rules for my favorite games. And my favorite games don't have house rules because they're so good that they don't need them. Yeah, that happens quite a bit. Is if a game needs to be house ruled, it's probably not a very good game. And I think that
Okay.
they kind of overlap that way. And what
Right.
games do you actually house rule in?
So I actually some of my favorite, well, I'll say some of my favorite games. One I can think of in particular that I think is a very simple house rule that improves the game quite a lot is for Orleans. So Orleans, I believe the game book says that when you buy one of the new tiles, you can choose anyone at all.
Mhm.
That means that you can every single time you play the game, you can do exact same strategy. My house rule is that there's a display of 3 tiles, and when you buy a tile, you can buy one of those 3, and it will get replaced randomly from the stack. Therefore, every game feels different. You have different paths to go down and different things to buy. So very simple. I'm not talking about changing the whole or any gameplay, to be honest. But that's a house rule that springs to mind that I use every single time.
That's so interesting because I don't like that house rule
Okay.
because it pigeonholes you into specific strategies. As opposed, like I actually had somebody recommend this to me when I played Caverna for the first time. They were like, "Oh, you should use this house rule where instead of having every single building option available, you have a market of tiles." And I really disliked it because I didn't have the choice. I didn't have the freedom. I couldn't build combos that existed before. I couldn't explore a new path because it just didn't show up in that original flop. I had to pick one of those. And I found it very frustrating and limiting because I think, and I'm thinking about Orleans right now and how that game has a lot of the cool stuff can come from those tiles. Not being able to pick the tiles that I want sounds a bit inhibitive. And I don't think I like that. I think that
Okay.
it may work for certain groups and you clearly enjoy it much better that way. But I don't really like Orleans that much, so it's a sitting about it like a 6 for me. So I think it's fine. But yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think I would ever play with that. That's so interesting.
It's more of a method to keep the game moving along to stop the whole stall. Right, I'm going to look for every single
Yeah,
tile here. Which one do I want? You can look at a glance. That's the one I want. I'm going to take it. For me, that is more important than the benefits of having everything open. But generally, as a rule, when there is a situation like that, I do prefer to have a limited option just to stop the hundreds of variables and to stop the game stalling. But there aren't many house rules at all that I put in. To be honest, I can probably think of less than 10 games that I use them, and even when I do, they are very minor tweaks.
gotcha. I know that there are some house rules that I approve of, and it's because they don't really change anything that much. There's that classic example that people use with Carcassonne where you draw the tile at the end of your
Yeah,
turn as opposed to the start
that's
of your
one.
turn. That
Yeah,
makes so much sense because it doesn't actually inhibit gameplay. It's not limiting your options, it's just giving you more time to think. So I enjoy stuff like that. And a house rule that I've unknowingly been using, I forgot what game it was, but there's a game where you draft and the actual rule is you never change directions when drafting. But the way
uh,
that I've been playing is we've gone forward and backwards. I don't think that's a huge difference, but I think it actually could be a big difference because you're affecting different players each round. You could be affecting
yeah.
the same player. So I don't know when it becomes so. What's the tipping point? When's the tipping point where the house rule is so game changing and when it's not?
I don't know. Honestly, I've never. Well, as you said, if there is something that is that significant that I need to game change the whole thing, I would agree with you that the game, there's probably something fundamentally wrong with the game,
Yeah.
and I would look at that rule and I would say, well, that's not a good decision. That's not a good design. Therefore, I would sell the game rather than let's try fix it.
Yeah.
That's where I kind of stand on it.
I'm totally with you there. I'm not in the mood to design a game right now. I'm not in the mood
Yeah,
to I'm not in the mood to fix something that you somehow got through publishing with glaring flaws. Like, I don't
yeah.
understand it. Funny game though that actually leans into house ruling is Tokyo Game Show. I love this game. I think it's amazing. I talked about it in my last games I played video. It's in the rulebook. The player who's playing as the game show host gets to make minor changes to the rules based on the people that are playing to improve accessibility. And I think that's a really cool choice because it gives you a bit of agency as the game show host. So kind of interesting that house rules have been put into the actual game experience. Have you seen any games like that where they actually employ house rules like that?
Not board game wise. I mean, I can think of like the old classic Dungeons and Dragons. They said that these
Yeah.
are the rules, but twist it how you like. If it's too hard, change it on the fly. It doesn't matter. These are
Mhm.
just a guideline, I suppose.
All right. So that is our question. House rules or no house rules? It looks like Dan is, yeah, we could do house rules. Me,
Within
not so
reason.
much. Within reason,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm curious to know what our audience thinks. And once again, I'll put a post on the community tab. What do you think about house rules? And how far should you go with those house rules? All right. This brings us to our next section. This is our mechanism appreciation. Dan, start us off. What are we talking about?
Okay, so mine is a rather simple one, but I think it affects the game quite significantly. This is from Caylus, an old style worker placement game. This is the passing system in Caylus. So Caylus in general is a very tight game anyway. Very hard to get money and to manage your funds because whenever you take a worker placement action, you have to spend a coin to do it. However, as soon as somebody passes in this game, they put their player piece in the kind of this bridge area in the center of the table, and every worker placement spot after that is going to cost an extra coin. And if somebody else passes, then it's going to cost an extra 2 coins, and so on. So you're really affected by the pacing of the other players. If people are going to pass before you're ready to do your actions or ready to complete your actions, then it's going to end up costing you quite a hefty amount of money to do so. So I really like that. So, and very simple rule, but it works so well for the game. And there's even a cool way to mitigate that by going to another worker placement spot, which means no matter when people have passed or how many people have passed, it's always going to cost you £1 no matter what. And because passing is so does affect the other players so much, that is quite a hotly contested space on the board. So works really well. It's a kind of another very elegant mechanism. You can explain it, nobody's going to forget it, but it still is a pivotal rule and one that makes the game drastically better, in my opinion. So, that is the passing mechanism from Caylus.
Interesting. Okay. I have not played Caylus. It's one of my blind spots in gaming that I need to give a try. Would this be one you recommend?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Much like you, until recently, this was another a big blind spot for me. I'm sure you're aware this was quite influential in a lot of modern board
Yes.
games,
Mhm.
massively so. And when you go back and play this one, you can see how influential it is because it does what it does so well. I mean, so many games are built on the foundation of Caylus. And that simple worker placement, owning buildings, you getting resources and money when people, or points, I think, when people use your buildings. Games like Worlds of Waterdeep use that.
Mhm.
But this one just manages to tie all these little things together in a package that is just like, well, I described it as like clockwork. You can just see how well the design is. The design is. My only fault with the game is a bit too long. It is a bit too long. But other than that, mechanically, it is wonderful.
Okay. Should I try out the older version or should I get the newer one? There's like a Caylus 1403, something like that.
Okay, I've only played the older one. I
Okay.
haven't played the newer one. I
Ooh,
think
okay.
I think it's a mixed bag. I think the diehards are kind of like
Yeah.
the more traditionalists are have their heart set on the original. This is the
Mhm.
best thing ever. We're not going to try the new one. It's perfect. Whereas a lot of the people who have tried the newer one, I think, say, yeah, this is. I think the time shaved off it because I think you lose probably about 25% of the
Ah,
time. So this is like a
okay.
90-minute game, whereas the original Caylus is probably looking at least 2 hours. So I think if that a shorter game is really important to you. Maybe the newer one, but again, I haven't played the newer one, so I can't say.
Gotcha. Interesting. If they came out with an El Grande 2, would you be all over it?
Oh, I would certainly give it a go. Yeah, why not?
Awesome. We have a quick question from Mom Gamer. She always has a campaign game set up on the table, goes back to it whenever they have a chance. Yes, this is exactly how I play campaign games. So I just wrapped up Familiar Tales a little bit ago, and that one has been sold off. It is gone now. I think the next big campaign game that I'm playing is, I might try, it looks like the new Reckoners expansion has a campaign in it, so I might give that one a try. Other than that, I'm always being tugged to play more Sleeping Gods. So I might play another campaign of Sleeping Gods. So I'm not sure. How about you? Do you have any tables that are set up for games at your house, Dan?
No, not at all. I have one gaming table, pack up, put it away, and I don't play any campaign games anyway, so I'm fine with that.
There you go, Mom Gamer. It looks like she's also found some success with some of Alex's rules for Terraforming Mars. Maybe that rule was the changing how to acquire cards, maybe paying for the patents for those. And then a random thought. What are your thoughts on Sniper Elite? Dan, go. Thoughts on Sniper Elite?
I have no thoughts. I've never even seen how it plays. I don't know how it plays. I don't know anything about it. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm basically in the same boat as you. I know it's from an IP, I'm pretty sure. I know there's an expansion coming out for it, pretty sure. Haven't seen the gameplay. I was not that compelled by it. But if it gets good reviews, if it looks like a good game, probably one I'll check out. That's generally how it goes. If it's a game that's going to get played, we're going to give it a try and try to play it. So excited to try it. All right. And then love Sleeping Gods. I'm so happy you do. I think that game is so good. So awesome. So excited for Distant Skies. All right. So my mechanism appreciation, I got to play a little bit of yesterday, and this is for the game Root. This is in particular some of the new components that come in the Hirelings. And in particular, I want to talk about the Hirelings die. If you aren't familiar with Root, there is a new expansion that makes it so that the smaller player games are going to be a bit more dynamic, and that has to do with the Hirelings. Hirelings are tiny, cute little critters that have their own associated cards that you'll claim whenever you reach a certain point threshold. So the way it works is once you get to 4, I think it's 4, 8, and 12, you claim one of these cards. It goes in front of you, and then you have this tiny little faction that at your disposal. You'll take turns placing them on the board so they exist at the start of the game, and you can think about that as you perform to see how you're going to utilize them. We played with the crows, the forest protector, this little deer guy, and then we also played with the rebellion, these little rabbits. So when it gets to that point value, though, you have to roll the Hirelings die. And this Hirelings die has a variety of symbols on it. So, well, I wouldn't say a variety, it has 2 symbols. It has these gold stars and these orange stars. If you are in the lead and you roll the Hirelings die, you only count the gold stars. If you are not in the lead and you roll the Hirelings die, you count all of the stars. What a well-implemented catch-up mechanism. You're utilizing the same components, and the only time you roll it is to determine how long you're actually going to get these Hirelings on your side. And you'll mark that by putting these command markers onto the Hirelings. And when those run out, that's when the command of them switches to the opponent. And so you'll get to roll that die wherever you happen to be whenever they switch. And so this is pretty cool. I like that catch-up mechanism is built into the pips of the dice. And I like how easy it is to tell who is going to be getting those control markers. So that's my mechanism appreciation. I really enjoy the pip change on the Root Hirelings die. Have you played any Root recently? Have you tried out the Hirelings?
I've only played one game of Root, and I don't think it was. No, I don't think the Hirelings were involved. No.
Okay, they just came out, maybe like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, no, I haven't then. No.
Okay.
But cool, yeah, cool mechanism. I like a simple catch-up mechanism, and yeah, I think I can think of one game that used something like this, which is a game I actually recently reviewed on my channel called Lancelot.
Oh, okay.
Where if you're behind, you go up twice as fast as if you're winning, yeah, on a certain track. So yeah, works well, and simple, again, very low rules overhead catch-up mechanism. So yeah, good.
Awesome. Now here's my biggest question to you though. Which of these is the cutest miniature? Or I guess not miniature. Which of these is the cutest piece?
Okay, I like the bear. Yeah, I'll go for the bear.
The bear is great. He's just one big piece and he has these club tokens. So this guy is a goon. Watch out. I really like the Corvids. I love their little glasses. And they're pretty OP. They were in our game that we played and they could steal cards or give you some extra attacks. Pretty powerful stuff. So I really like them though. I think they're really cute. All right. So that is our card income. No, what was that? That was mechanism appreciation. We now enter random game time. All
Ooh.
right. So we will go into BGG and we will select a random game and we will talk about said random game. Do you have any ideas or any predictions as to what we're going to see?
Oh, I'm going to go for something with only one rating on it, and that's going to be from the designer, and it's going to be a 10.
That's really funny because I've been playing a lot of games recently where there's totally a designer that gives all of his games 10s, and he's like one of the only. There's like maybe 10 ratings for the game. I think that's hilarious. Oh my gosh! I think it's going to be actually a game from a well-known company.
Cool.
All right, here goes random game time. It is Operation Storm, Stalin's Barbarossa. Oh my gosh, it's rated a 10 with one rating. Is it the designer? Oh my gosh! How? What a legend!
Look at that. Absolute, yeah.
How?
Nostradamus. Fantastic.
How? Oh, this is a
That's wild.
momentous time in all of corporate cardboard. 20th episode special. Dan perfectly guessed the random game.
That's incredible. We can
I'm
just retire now.
You can. This is it. This is the last episode of Corporate Cardboard. We appreciate all of you who are in the comments. Mom Gamer, come dice with me. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you never again. This is it. We can rest on our laurels now. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, what a baller. Okay, very cool. What is this game, though? It is What If the Soviets Attacked First in 1941? Two-player, low complexity strategic simulation of the campaign that could have resulted had Stalin agreed to again. Okay, so it's a what if scenario of a war game. Sounds very cool. It's a two-player game. As you can see, it doesn't look like anybody has actually played this, or at least nobody's marked it here. It doesn't have a date as to when it was created.
No.
Surprise. Oh, date of publication 2 years ago. Oh, it looks like it ran for a Kickstarter here in 2021. Ooh, we're getting into the nitty-gritty here.
Oh.
Oh, let's go. Let's take a look. Oh, it
Okay.
was on Kickstarter. It had 152 backers. So I imagine that this is probably delivering right now. This is
Yeah.
cool. It's a what if series game. Okay, by One Small Step game. So it is. You've got the board here. You've got your. It looks like it's a chit game. You can get. They have the rule book available. Okay, the delivery was estimated in July of 2021. I'm curious to see if that happened with all the shipping crisis stuff. I imagine not. And I'm curious to see what happens as a result from this. But that's, I actually really like the idea of, uh, lurking for a bit. This is, this is a really cool idea for a war system. It honestly reminds me a little bit of Unmatched, the what if. What if this person fought this person? Goku versus Superman, the classic argument. If you were to do a war game like this, what would you make your what if scenario about?
Oh, Christ.
That's a big question.
Yeah. You put me on the spot there. I honestly I could not think of an answer. I'm afraid. Sorry.
My instant thought, it's not necessarily a war game, but what if insert famous pacifist? What if Gandhi was not a pacifist? How would that turn out? Or any activist, if they had a different approach to the way they did something, if they were more radical as opposed to reserved. That would be wild to think about.
Yeah. Or maybe even just what if Nazi Germany won World War II, and then you could do a follow-up one.
That's true.
Maybe that's been done before. I imagine it has been done before.
I imagine. I feel like that's a pretty common trope when it comes to historical speculation. But I still think it would be very interesting. And it's like there's a lot of simulations of wars, and you get to see how they might have played out differently. And
yeah,
I'm trying to think like Fog of War. You may see how that may have resulted, but maybe this is the step after that. What is the next step? It could be even something outside of a war game, a management game of some sort, resource management, where you're trying to figure out what to do with all this newly acquired land or your new status. It's interesting. I like this idea. So the What If series, I hope that the Kickstarter is received well. I'm glad that it funded, and best of luck to you. Let me get the designer up here. Ty Bamba, best of luck to you. I hope that your project is a huge success.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Great. So that is our... Yep, that is our random game. We now go into the why is this in your collection? Can you hear me okay? It says something about my
I
audio.
I can hear you perfectly. Yep.
Okay, awesome. All right, so why is this in your collection? And Dan, I'm going to put you on the spot first here. I have my game ready to go. My question to you is why is this game in your collection?
Ooh,
Gunkimono. So
okay.
Gunkimono, tell us a little bit about it and why is it in your collection? It's marked
Okay.
as owned in your collection, I believe.
Yep, it is owned. It is owned in my collection. It's on the shelf just behind me here.
Okay.
So this one, I actually asked. I think I asked this question to you a while ago, actually, because I was curious about picking it up myself. And it's to be honest, this is. Well, recently I've been going through a bit of a phase where I'm preferring to play low rules overhead games with still some decent decisions to be had. Some more like Knizia style designs, or talk about medium to medium light Euro economic style games. And Gunkimono for me always fits in that bracket. It does almost remind me like a Knizia game, but this is a tile placement game where you have a grid of different coloured squares, I suppose, and then you're laying tiles out on top of these squares and trying to extend these grids and getting points if you extend that colour. However, if you choose to forsake doing that, you can choose to climb up these tracks. And when you meet these different thresholds on these tracks, you can put these pagodas down on this main kind of grid of colours, and that will create a kind of a ticking point where every single round you'll start generating points passively. And I really like that mechanism. Like kind of trading off to, do I want a big grab of points now, or do I want to get a steady income as we go? You're trying to help yourself, but you're trying to deplete the coverage of other players as well to stop them from, capitalizing on that. So I think a very simple game, but one that works pretty well. It's very, very abstract in the way it plays. But I like it. I think it works well for what it does. I will admit that I was kind of expecting to find some hidden layers here, like one of those games that would unravel and become more rich and stuff as you play it. So far, I think I'm yet to see that. If I'm honest, I think it's simple and it kind of stays at that simple level. It doesn't go much beyond that. But I think it's pretty fast. I think it's pretty fun. And I think it's a decent design. So I've got no issue playing this one. And I think it's just solid. So for now, I'm happy to have it in my collection. I'll certainly play it more. Do I think it's the best game in the world? No. But do I think it's a pretty clever and simple tile placement game? Then yeah, I do. I think it's a good candidate to play in 30 to 45 minutes.
Gotcha. So I think that this game is exactly what you described. Very low rules overhead. I've had success teaching this game with kids. They like the idea of getting lots of points right away. And then you see some of the other kids at the table, they're able to go up the different tracks. And then when they get their pagoda out, they're so excited that they're able to generate these points. They feel really good about it. But this is one that I do not pull out to play myself. I find it to be, as you described, there's no real hidden layers here. The choices end up being pretty obvious with most of your plays, and sometimes the tile draw can be pretty debilitating. And I find that a little frustrating when you're maybe missing specific colors to get to specific points on your pagodas to actually summon them. And it can feel really bad when you're only playing you have these 5 one of tiles in front of you and you can use those, but you're getting less action efficiency for doing so. And it feels kind of bad to actually be using those. So it's one that I am finding myself not even thinking about when it's coming to getting to play a game, and it's one that I don't know if it's going to stay in the library. I think it's in our sell pile right now, because I think if I'm going to play a game with kids, it probably will not be this one. But I think that kids do like that sensation of getting immediate points for doing something. So it's a good kids game for me, but it's not one that I think that I'll be pulling out on game nights. But I was curious to hear what your thoughts were on it now that it's in your library.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with you, but I think it's a nice game, and I'm never going to really object to playing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I might even suggest playing it every now and then. I like it. I don't love it. It's never going to be one of my favorites, but I think it's solid.
All right. And Dan, what do you got for me? Why is this game in your collection?
Okay, so mine one is actually, when I saw this one, I thought this was going to be a complete pile of you know what. But you've rated it highly, so there might be more here than I think, because I wasn't quite sure what the gameplay was. I know there's one gimmick to it, and I'll just out the game. This is I forgot what it's called. Oh yeah, throw burrito.
Okay. Oh man. All right, so this is a take on Spoons, if you're familiar with that classic game. So, Spoons is a game of picking up cards from piles as fast as you can and trying to match sets. In this case, you're trying to match sets of three. And every time you match a set of three in front of you, it's worth a point. However, there are some cards that are worth more points, and these are the battle cards. And they're all brightly colored, so it's easy to tell what they are. Now, the battle cards are going to trigger a burrito fight. And these burritos you'll take from the center and literally chuck at each other. And you are trying to chuck it based on whatever the challenge is. So there's burrito brawls where your neighbors will have to, you'll say it nice and loud, burrito brawl, and then your neighbors will grab the burritos and chuck them at the other people. And if they hit the other person, then they win the brawl. If you get hit by the burrito, you get like a little wound token. It's worth minus a point. So this is a game of real-time chaos with fast-paced decisions and multiple points of awareness, and that is why I like it. So I was able to articulate my thoughts here on why I enjoy this game. So because it's a real-time game with multiple facets of attention prioritization, and it's all wrapped together with this extremely goofy theme. The gameplay itself is it's simple, goofy fun. And I think that this sets out to do simple, goofy fun in a really well done way. And the battle cards are exciting when they happen, they are quick, and then the burritos are constructed of a foam that feels like nothing when you get hit by it. So I'm really happy that they're not like rocks. I couldn't imagine. Oh my gosh, like getting pelted and having wounds. I felt really bad. I actually played this last week with some friends of the channel, actually, Priscilla and her husband Kyle, and we played this for the first time with them. And I kept on hitting her in the face. I felt so bad, but luckily it didn't hurt. But I don't know why. It was like a magnet. It felt terrible, but that's a fact that these do not hurt. They're big enough and awkwardly shaped enough where they're not going to poke anything, which is awesome. And I think that's perfect for what the game was trying to do. For a raucous of a time that has you splitting your attention to multiple areas and then has a 2-round structure where you play the first time, and if the same person wins twice, they win the whole game. But if it's a tie, if someone else wins the second game, those two people have a final duel to determine the winner. So a very hilarious spectacle, a goofy time. I think this is a good one, particularly for, I think anybody could play this game. A group of middle schoolers actually taught me this game because they were like, Mr. Franklin, you want to play this? And I was like, sure, I'll give it a try. I've played Exploding Kittens. You all seem to have you all seem to have fun with this. And it was fun. I had a great time playing. It was easy to play, and the kids were very invested, and so was I. I was excited to pelt the crap out of some people with some burritos. And there's a new edition of this that uses avocados, and that is really funny because you can combine them to make one big combo game where you have the burritos and the avocados on the board, and there's special war cards that use both of them. So very goofy. If you are looking for a game that is like this is a really good one in the genre. So that's why I like that. I think this is quite fun.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I get it. I mean, one of those games where you can't really help but have fun because it's so silly. But I thought that after you've played it once, maybe the ship sailed, to one note, and then not really have the desire to go back to play it anymore. But obviously, there's more to it than I thought.
It's quite fun, and the game play is very short. It's about 10 minutes, so very fast game.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about as it's great in its space as I would say that Spotted is great in its space for like a speed reaction game. So I think that those are very good games that work in similar time frames, but have specific niches in the board gaming hobby. So quite like it. I'm quite impressed, and I like playing this game. It's fun.
Okay, cool.
Sweet. Now we move on to A to Z. This is our section where we go through the alphabet, and we are all the way at T. So we're close to the end of this, and we're going to have to probably figure out something else to do once this section is done. All right, so here we go. A to Z. Start us off, Dan. What are we talking about on letter T?
Okay, yeah. So my lighter of the two games I'm talking about is a game I played recently, actually, and really enjoyed. So this is Trapwords, which is a team versus team party game, a word association party game. But the twist of this game is that you are trying to get your teammates to guess a certain word by giving clues. However, the other team has an opportunity to write some words down secretly. And if the person giving the clues on the other team says one of those words, then they automatically lose. So, say the keyword was something like, I don't know, I don't know, Dracula or something. The other team might write, vampire or fangs. So you're going to try and avoid those obvious words, and you'll probably end up saying something or be a bit more difficult for your team to guess the right word. But however, as the game goes on, you'll probably start steering away from those obvious words, and then it's the whole kind of just one thing. You think they're going to go obvious, but they don't go obvious, and then vice versa. And that's what this game is really. You're just trying to get to the end of this track. It has a really cool catch-up mechanism actually, where if one of the teams is really running ahead, then they have to take these kind of punishment cards, which will make it slightly more difficult for them to complete their mission. It might be like, because this game is done under a very tight time restrictions, you get like 30 seconds to give clues to your opponent. But one of the punishments is that whenever you say a word, you have to repeat it. So you're spending double the time to give the same clues, and that kind of silly little things like that. But it's a really nice party game. We enjoyed it a lot, and it's just enjoyable, silly fun. Takes about half an hour, and a different take on that word association party game, and it's good. It's pretty good.
This sounds great. What would you say the age range on this game would be, or the best player count?
Oh, the best player count. I think 3 versus 3 is the best.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 people guessing the clues, 1 person giving the clues. Yeah, I think that's about right.
Awesome. All right, and then age range. I assume you need to know how to read to play this, or is this as long as someone can read that central word, you'll be fine?
Yeah, as long as you can read, and yeah, they're all simple words. I don't think there's anything terribly complex. Maybe the odd word or two that isn't, in everyday language, but nothing. No, we're not talking really complicated scientific words. It's normally like horror themed words, just little like. Because I think that's the theme of the game. It's like a dungeon crawl kind of thing. They're mainly along those lines.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I think kids can play this happily.
Awesome. All right, so that is Trapwords, Dan's light game for T. Now, if you're here in the chat with us, please let us know in the comments what games that you've chosen for the letter T, for the light game, and then a heavier game. Now, my next game here is a light game from the Tokyo series. Recently, I was able to get a huge chunk of all of the Tokyo series games. So I had one of each, and this is all Jordan Draper games. And they are very hit or miss. One of my favorites is Tokyo Game Show, but I talked about that a lot recently, so it's not going to be my feature here. But if I hadn't talked about it already, it would have definitely been my pick for this. But this one is a different game from the Tokyo series. This is called Tokyo Jutaku. So this is a form of Japanese architecture, and it's brought into display here in the game. And the way that it's done is it's a dexterity game and a real-time game. A lot of buzzwords here that may scare off a lot of people, that you are going to be taking these challenge cards from this face-up display area. So this is what the board looks like when you go to play. You'll have all of these different locations spread around this central area of pieces. And when it's your turn, I guess it's all simultaneous generally, but you're going to have a challenge card in front of you. And the challenge card is going to have a specific layout in front of you. So for example, Ueno here, you need to build a 2-floor structure that uses exactly 5 pieces. And if you do so, you get 5,000 points for the end of the game. And so this is a push your luck system where you are deciding how risky you want to be, because you have to complete your structure before everybody else. You're going to take all of these pieces in front of you, one at a time from the center, and then place them onto your structure within these limitations. So as you can see here, there's that little black area on the outside. This person has been able to put all of their pieces inside there. And you have some freedom with these more awkward shapes, something like so. And the only other big restriction is when you build up, you cannot build over anything. So these pieces are so funky. They are very strangely shaped, but they work in the context of the experience. You're looking for smaller pieces to be able to fit into these nooks and crannies. And then when you're done, you have a very cool looking architectural piece that you've actually created in front of you. I think it's a very neat system with the taking one piece at a time, because you are looking for specific objects and pieces. And when you go to pick up that next piece, it may not be there. So you have to pivot at an instant and change your plan. And once you finish, you can move your character around that main game board, pick a new plan, and try to score the most points before the end of the game. So I think this is a really cool take on this dexterity style. I really enjoy the way that the pieces are unique and functional. And it also reminds me a little bit of something like junk art, where the more you play, the more familiar you get with the pieces, and you start understanding the intricacies of how they can fit together, how they can stack on top, and how you can handle them. So I think this is a game that you can learn and you can get better at. But I really enjoy the presentation here, and it reminds me a lot of Japan, where you have very small places to build things, but you're going to be building up quite a bit, and you have to do so in a structurally sound way. So very impressed. This is a great little light dexterity game. This is Tokyo Jutaku. Have you seen this, or have you seen any of the games from this series?
I've heard a few of these of a few of these games. I've not really looked into how they play, but this looks cool. I like the look of this. You said this is real time? Is this a bit like the race, not race for the galaxy, the galaxy tracker system, where you can kind of pick one from the center, see if it fits or not. If it doesn't fit, put it back and get another one. Is that how it works? Or
Basically, yeah. You can do it. You're never forced to take a piece. You can always put it back and grab a new one, and then that piece becomes available to everybody else.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what I thought. Okay, cool. Yeah, it looks a lot of fun. And yeah, the actual cuts of these shapes look pretty interesting. So
It's pretty
I'd
cool.
play this. I'll definitely play this.
Awesome. So that is Tokyo Jutaku. All right, Dan, what's your next game here?
Yeah, so my next game is Tzolkin, the Mayan calendar. So I know we talk about this a lot on the show. I think we have over the episodes, but I just kind of want to talk about this in a different kind of way, really. So if you don't know what Tzolkin is, it's a really cool worker placement game where when you put workers on these gears, the longer you leave them, the better the reward you're going to get, and they kind of combo with each things. And every round you have to either put something on the gears or take something off the gears, and it's a really cool puzzly dimension to the game. But I kind of want to talk about Tzolkin really in the aspect that this was actually one of the first, if not the first, pure Euro game that I ever played. And when I first played it, I was absolutely blown away with how this worked. I was like, I didn't know that games could be like this. And I still feel that way, like all these years later. I think it's held up so well, and it's still probably in my top 2 or 3 worker placement games of all time. I love it that much. And I just think, I think it's really stood the test of time, and it's cool to see that, it's just held up that well. And I still love it. It's a very cool game. It's very different. It's not been replicated by anything else. And with so many different worker placement games out there, this one still manages to hold its own, and in fact, completely, I think, blow a lot of the other worker placement games out of the water for me. Pretty crunchy game, but I think it's quite intuitive as well as the way it plays, because you only need to explain those rules really, and once you know what all the symbols are, then the rules themselves, so it's easy, but kind of mapping out the brain burner experience of timing and things is where the gameplay really shines and really kind of gives you enough meat to kind of sink your teeth into. So I think it's a brilliant game, stayed on my shelf and not even showed any signs of that changing. So that's Tzolkin the Mayan calendar. Maybe even it probably still is my favorite of the T series.
Yeah. I can totally understand that. This has so much to love. This is one of my favorite things, where getting another worker is as great of a blessing as it is a curse with the amount of
Yeah,
extra
that's
food you
true.
have to pay. I love that. And you don't have to go out of your way to get one. There's so much open strategy to this game, and I really enjoy the expansion content as well, with the way that you can get those immediate actions on top of that long-term planning. So you've got some great choices every single turn. I think you're totally spot on here with this game absolutely standing the test of the time, and with no real game that has challenged it with its borrowed mechanisms. This is so cool. I agree with you
Yeah.
here.
I wonder if there is going to be a version 2 or some kind of change, or I don't know if even Tashini himself is going to say, let's take the system again and use it again, because obviously people love it, because people still talk about this one, and it's with so many new games coming out, that seems to be happening less and less nowadays. So, and people are struggling for ideas now because there are so many games coming out.
Yeah.
That this one still has a whole world of opportunities that you can go just taking this core system. So I think it's a great game.
Well said. I'm excited to see what the future holds for these games in the T series, including Tzolkin, the Mayan calendar. We got a couple of quick questions from Mom Gamer. First off, what are our thoughts on Twilight Struggle, another T game? And is it in your collection? Dan, is Twilight Struggle in your collection?
No, it's not. We're talking about kind of blind spots in our gaming knowledge. This is a big blind spot in mine. I've never played it. I'm not sure if it'd be right for me personally to own, and I don't know anybody else who has it, so I've not had the opportunity to play it. But I'd love to, because I think it's one of those games that that you need to try, because it is so revered and it has played such a pivotal part in modern board gaming, really. So yeah, I'm kind of sad to say I haven't tried this one, but I would love to.
Gotcha.
What about you?
I have played. My friend Dan showed me how to play, and I got destroyed, absolutely destroyed. But I was able to understand the system, and I understand the appeal of the game. It's a game where the first time you play, you're just understanding the mechanisms and the cards that could potentially show up. And then in future plays, you can anticipate the different events, the different plays that both players will have access to throughout the course of the game. The game time is a bit long for me, and it has a lot of tug of wars going on in a lot of places. And I think that games like Blitzkrieg are going to be offering something similar, or even something as small as Cape or Europe, where you're having that tug of war on small areas. I think that those are going to give me that sensation in a smaller package and make it a bit more even from the off. And it won't be something that I have to invest my time in to teaching other people. But I do think that this is a game that would do very well if you have two people that are committed and ready to play it.
Yeah.
There's an app for this game that I hear is very good, and maybe if that's something you're into, I would actually probably look into that if you want to give it a try, just to understand the mechanisms and to see why it's a revered game, because it does have some very cool stuff going on in it with the different action cards. You have a lot of multi-use cards with being able to use them for ops, which are action points, or for the event that's printed on the card. And the more that you know the cards, the more you're familiar with, you know when is a good time to give up a specific event and when's a good time to use them for ops. But that's something that I missed on my first couple of plays, and was still going to take some time to get used to, but not necessarily something that I wanted to use my limited two-player playtime to actually do. So those are my thoughts on Twilight Struggle. Good question, Mom Gamer.
Yeah.
All right, and this brings me to my last T game, my big T game. This is Terra Mystica. I love Terra Mystica. It is so good, and I'm glad you like it too, Dan, because I think this game is absolutely wonderful. But I want to talk in particular about a new experience I had with Terra Mystica, which is awesome. This is the Merchants of the Seas expansion. If you haven't played with this already, Dan, play with it because it is so good. This offers way more routes that you can go down, even more choices when it comes to the building of the building procedure in the game. And then the greatest thing that it adds is more positive player interaction. This is so awesome because the tension from Terra Mystica comes from building onto different spots on the board and then potentially pushing people out of spaces that may have been great for them for completing cities. But there's a bunch of positives in the core game where if you are next to somebody and they're building next to you, you're generating power resources to allow you to extend your plays and get more actions. And you're also able to build better buildings at decreased costs. The Merchants of the Sea expansion offers a new type of building that you can create, and this is your harbor. And this harbor can produce ships, and you can send those ships to your opponent's buildings to generate extra resources. So you get points, you get resources for doing so, but just like when you build next to somebody, you also give that player extra power for doing so. But this comes at a cost to that player. They have to pay victory points based on the power of the building that's been traded with. This is brilliant. This is so awesome. It gives you more to do with the map. It has you summoning pieces onto the board and actually using those pieces to travel along the routes and the canals. Your placement becomes that much more important. The cooperation is there, and the positive player interaction it's even more important now. And I love this. You have more options when it comes to the blessing tiles. You have new abilities that each faction can get, and then new buildings that those factions can create, and more big stuff to make more big cities, to get more bonuses. What a great expansion. Like, I love Gaia Project and Terra Mystica, but I think this expansion, it's making me really like Terra Mystica. I kind of want to play this a little bit more than Gaia Project with Merchants of the Seas. I'm not going to lie. It's pretty good stuff, man.
Okay, well,
so
I was saying earlier, we were talking about my my Shelf of Shame. Well, I've got this expansion on my Shelf of Shame.
Gosh.
So I have got it. I just need to get it played more. And to be honest, I think I need to explore the base game alone a bit more because I'm still not really, wrap my whole head around it. I just still need to be a lot better at it. But yeah, I'm certainly have this ready in situ to use when I want to play with it.
Oh my
And
gosh, you gotta.
Really good.
It's so good. And one last thing I forgot to mention with the trading of the buildings, you can only trade with each building once. So this is so cool because it puts a big decision on you of when do you actually trade with the building? Do you trade with it while it's small to get that immediate bonus right away? Or do you wait until the game goes on, trade with it while it's big, and they get a bigger bonus? But in return, you're giving the other person more stuff because you're trading with a bigger power building, which means they get more power generation. But will they take it because it's worth points? Dan, you got to play this game. It's so good.
Yeah, it's right at the top of my list to play again soon. So hopefully I'll get it played and start introducing this expansion.
Awesome. Oh, you got prioritize this one. Put that on the top of your shelf of shame.
All right, I will.
And we have another comment from Mom Gamer. How are you liking Perseverance so far? Just received the copy today. So I've only played Perseverance at 2 actually, and I've played it about 5 times. I played the first episode 3 times, second episode 2 times. And I think the second episode is way more fun. There's so many different choices. You have these giant tech trees on your board, and that is awesome. I think the combat, though, in the first one is a bit more exciting because you have this big tower defense style that you're going. So both very interesting games, very fun games, but I don't think I ever want to play them with more than 3 people because the downtime can be crazy because there's a lot of sequences that you have to go through on your turn. Definitely not as clean as a game like Anachrony, where the actions are very quick and you're constantly playing but taking a lot of actions. But there are a lot of great choices in this game, especially in that second one with the different paths and different exploration. Have you tried Perseverance, Dan, or played any of the new stuff?
No, I haven't. Again, I think I've got too many things on my shelf that I need to get played. I'd like to try this one, but I think it's maybe a bit too much for me at this point. And maybe down the road, if if I have a deeper look into it, because I think it's a dice. Is it dice driven Euro?
It is dice driven, a dice drafting Euro game. Yeah.
Yeah. So I tend to like those games. More often than not, a lot of my favorite games have that, mechanism to it. So definitely on my radar, but not for the foreseeable future, I think.
Gotcha. And then one last question from Mom Gamer here. How do you learn a new game? Do you depend on reading the rulebook, watch how to play a playthrough? How do you learn a new game, Dan?
I actually do like reading from the rulebook, yeah. Sometimes if I have a more complex involved games, I might watch a playthrough just to make me familiar with a few things and then read the rulebook when it will start to sink in a bit better. But generally, I'm perfectly happy with just reading a rulebook.
Gotcha. I do a mix. It actually takes me a really long time to learn new games. I would say it takes me about 3 or 4 hours to learn a new game. I'm really bad at it because I have a really bad attention span. So what I'll do is I'll make sure the rulebook's in front of me, go through the setup with the game so I can get familiar with the pieces, the different areas on the board, and then I'll check a YouTube video to see if I can find a video that has good coverage on it. I really like John Gates Games videos, and sometimes I'll even take those with me to the gym and watch them while I'm doing exercises or what, and just try to get an understanding of what a game turn looks like, and then I'll play a practice game with this rule understanding, and I'll have the rule book out to confirm that I'm doing the actions correctly. So I like using a combination of everything. I think that the rule book is probably the best for actually figuring out what the sequence and the actual rules are, because in videos sometimes they will skip over things that are pretty important in the rule book. So I think doing both is necessary, but not necessarily ideal, which is why I have such a hard time doing it. So it's not my favorite thing. Very, very hard time to learn games for me, which is I'm kind of impressed that I don't have a shelf of shame because I find it so hard to learn games.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I mean, the more it builds up, my desire to keep learning new games I must admit is waning. But I love playing new games. I just don't like learning new games.
Yes, I totally get that. I think the fact that most games that we get has solo or co-op modes makes it so they are easier to learn because I don't have to put that pressure of other people waiting for me to check rules references and things like that. It alleviates that quite a bit, which is awesome because I feel better about learning and going through that process.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's our show. That is Corporate Cardboard episode 20. Before we go, Dan, any games that you're excited that you're looking forward to playing before we exit?
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier, I finally got a copy of it in English of Messina 1347.
Yeah.
So yeah, finally that's came out. And I managed to pick up a couple of Grail games that I've been after for a long time. So Calimala, which was actually, I think, the first designed by Fabio Lipiano, who's kind of hitting his stride recently with games like Merv and Zapatec. So this was like one I've been after from his, and I think I may have secured a copy of Shipyard as well, which is one of the older Vladimir Suki games, which again is very hard to get nowadays. So hopefully I'm going to get one of those posted to me shortly. But yeah, I got other stuff as well, but I won't bore you with all the other games on my shelf for shame, because I have 25 of them.
Oh my
goodness.
What about you? So the 2 games that come to my mind right away are hopefully playing. I know for sure I'm playing Dune Imperium tonight with the expansion, which I love. I think that expansion is incredible. So I'm so excited to play more of it. Planning on playing potentially Planet Unknown. Going to share some favorites tonight. I'm going to share Capital X 2, Biblios. Oh my gosh, we're just going through all the good stuff. I'm so excited. All these little fillers. And then we also have I'm going to Florida tomorrow. And so, not tomorrow. I'm starting my trip tomorrow, but I'll be in Florida soon. I'm going to hang out with my brother, and he lives in Sarasota, which is a big city full of fish and all this awesome markets and whatnot there. And I'm bringing with me Tokyo Tsukiji Market. It's the last game from the Tokyo series that I have not played. And apparently it's a lot like Container. And so that's one that I'm very excited to try because it has the fishing market theme. And it's really fun because we'll be in a place where we're going to be getting seafood. And I think it's very appropriate because we'll be hanging out on the beach quite a bit. And I think that sounds like fun to just have this very thematic experience. And I like containers, so I'm curious to see how this works. We got the expansion too because I heard that it fixes some of the problems that were present in the original game. So I'm going to implement the expansion changes right away just so that we have a better experience. So this is one of those times where I cannot play the game on my own because it doesn't have a solo or cooperative experience. So my entire plane ride there is probably going to be committing to playing the rules out in my head and doing practice turns and trying to have that teach ready to go when I get there. So hopefully that's a really good experience. But if I can, I'll play more Burncycle today, tonight, tomorrow morning before I have to leave. I would like to play more Burncycle as much as possible before I leave. Amazing game.
Oh, I do. I hope you have a good time playing those games because.
Oh. Yeah, me too. I hope they're great. I hope that Tsukiji Market lives up to the hype as this very small thematic container style game. So I hope it's good. And then lastly, we have some comments from Mom Gamer. Learning a game takes a long time. Best response I've ever received. Yes, I think it's so hard to learn new games. So I'm glad that we've got some empathy there and you can understand my situation. And then appreciated answering all the questions. We thank you so much for asking questions, Mom Gamer. We love having you on the chat here. And thank you for being part of our channels, for being part of the Chairman of the Board's channel, for being part of SideGame LLC. We love having you here. So thank you so much for being part of our experience with the YouTube scene. So those are the games we're looking forward to playing. That was episode 20 of Corporate Cardboard. Any final touches before we close off, Dan?
No, just thanks for having me on. And yeah, as always, been a pleasure.
Awesome. And thank you again, Mom Gamer, and Come Dice With Me for being in the chat and commenting. And if you're watching this video in a future date, please let us know what you think about all the stuff we talked about. I know that's a big ask, but I appreciate you being here and engaging, and I just am excited to talk about games. So thank you so much. And thank you again, Dan, for being here. And if you haven't already, please make sure you go check out Dan's channel over at Chairman of the Board. Any upcoming videos that you're excited to share in the near future?
Yeah, I got a few relatively hot games. So Carnegie is coming up for a review. I played it once, and I'm going to be a bit, got to hold back on my thoughts for now. And other reviews, I've got some smaller little things. Kaching, I've got a review of Kaching coming out, which is a game you actually told me all about.
Hey-yo.
Yeah, and just some other little bits and bobs, I think. And my roundup is going to release on the 1st of next month, where I talk about all the new games I played during this month and rank them from my least favorite to my most favorite. And I think I've got at least 20 games on there, some really good ones as well. So be sure to check that one out.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Dan, again. Yeah, super excited to see. I love your roundups. I love the way that you rank them in order, so the games just get better and better. And I'm always excited to see what makes the top of your list. So thank you again so much for watching, and thank you for being here with us and sharing this conversation. SideGame Strong, y'all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.